Ever watch a documentary and find yourself with more questions than answers?
Happens to me all the time.
Right. Well, today we are diving into one that really got us thinking, HBO's Chimp Crazy.
Oh, yeah. This one was something else.
To unpack it all, we've got excerpts from the show's Wikipedia page and this gold mine of a transcript from the director's interview on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah. Should be interesting to see how those different perspectives kind of play off each other.
Totally. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, Chimp Crazy is from the same director who brought us Tiger King.
Can't go wrong with that pedigree.
Seriously. And it sounds like we're in for another wild ride. This time we're following the story of Tonya Haddix. She's an animal broker with this, deep love for chimps, specifically her chimp named Tonka.
And that's where things get interesting,
Yeah, it sounds like their story takes some pretty unexpected turns.
to say the least. It really makes you confront some seriously uncomfortable questions about keeping primates in captivity, period. Like, is this really about love for these animals? Or are we just projecting our own, desires onto them?
That's a great question, and I feel like it's something we need to keep in mind as we go deeper into this.
For sure.
What I find really fascinating, though, is that this isn't just about one woman and her chimp. We're also talking about this whole other layer with the Missouri Primate Foundation.
Oh, yeah. That place has some stories.
Seriously.
The foundation itself is like this microcosm of the issues at the heart of this whole debate. It was founded by a woman named Connie Casey who, get this, started out breeding chimps and renting them out.
Wait, renting them out for, what, parties?
Pretty much. For entertainment. I mean, can you imagine that? Having a chimpanzee perform at, your kid's birthday? It sounds crazy now, but it was once totally normal.
That's wild. It really shows how much our perceptions have hopefully evolved.
Yeah, hopefully.
But from what we've read about the Missouri Primate Foundation, it wasn't exactly a happy place for these chimps, you know?
No, not at all. The USDA violations alone, it's rough. Escapes, even attacks. There's this one tragic incident where a chimp named Susie got out and a neighbor ended up shooting and killing her. It just shows how dangerous this is for both the animals and the people, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes you wonder, at what point do we draw the line? Is there even any way to guarantee everyone's safety when you're keeping these animals so close to humans?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And it makes you think about one of the most disturbing stories to come out of that facility, Travis the chimp.
Oh, yeah. That case was everywhere. Really brought the whole issue of primate ownership into the spotlight.
He was actually bred at the Missouri Primate Foundation.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
And then years later, this horrific attack happened in Connecticut back in 2009.
For anyone who doesn't know, Travis attacked a woman named Charla Nash. The injuries were just devastating.
Absolutely horrific. And it just underscores how unpredictable these animals can be, Even if they've been raised by humans, it doesn't erase their instincts. And the fact that Travis came from the Missouri Primate Foundation just adds this whole other layer to it. What were the conditions there? What role did the facility itself play in this tragedy?
It's heavy stuff. I mean, I think after hearing about an attack like that, most people were like, why would anyone ever want a chimpanzee as a pet? But clearly there are people out there who feel this powerful connection to these animals. And I think Tonya Haddix is a prime example of that. Can you tell us a bit more about her and how she fits into all of this?
Yeah, so Tonya, she was an animal broker. And like I said, she had this real soft spot for chimps. She was involved with the Missouri Primate Foundation herself, actually. And that's actually how she ends up at the center of this whole legal battle with authorities and PETA.
Okay, so we've got this facility with the super sketchy history, and now we've got Tonya Haddix caught in the middle of it all. What happens next?
Well, this is where it gets good. The authorities try to seize the chimpanzees from the Missouri Primate Foundation.
Citing welfare concerns or whatever?
Right, exactly. So they go to collect the chimps and...
Wait, hold on. This is where Tonka comes in, right?
Right.
What happened to him? Did he escape or?
Gone. Poof. Vanished. Nobody can find this chimp.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. And this is where the story veers straight into Tiger King territory. Buckle up.
Okay, you've got my attention.
Yeah.
What happened?
Tonya. She hid Tonka in her basement.
Wait, she had a chimp in her basement, in her house?
Yep. Right under everyone's noses this whole time. And for a while, it actually worked. She got away with it.
That's incredible, but it couldn't last forever, right? What happened when people found out?
Well, that's when things got really complicated. Even for the documentary filmmakers, it was a huge deal. They knew about Tonka being hidden, but were torn between, doing their jobs and their concern for this chimp. It was quite the dilemma for them.
I can't imagine being in their position, like trying to be objective, but also knowing this animal is in a weird situation. So what'd they do?
In the end, they decided to contact PETA and let them know where Tonka was.
Wow.
And that led to a whole dramatic rescue by federal marshals, which, I'm not going to lie, makes for some pretty intense viewing in the documentary.
Okay, so Tonka's rescued from this basement. What happens to him? Where does he go?
He ends up at a sanctuary in Florida called Save the Chimps. And let me tell you, it's a world of difference from that basement.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, the relief he must have felt to be somewhere safe and actually made for chimps, right?
Exactly. He's got acres of natural habitat to roam around in, a proper diet, veterinary care if he needs it, and most importantly, he can actually socialize with other chimps now. It really makes you think about, what people imagine when they think of a loving home for a chimp versus what these animals actually need.
Totally. It's like maybe people like Tonya Haddix, in trying to give these chimps love, are actually kind of preventing them from having a truly fulfilling life, in the right environment.
It's a really complex issue. There's just no easy answers when it comes to this stuff. But Tonka's story brings up another huge point in this whole debate.
Which is,
The sheer number of primates being kept as pets in the U.S. It's not just a few isolated cases.
you're right, it's easy to get caught up in the individual stories and forget that this is a much bigger issue. So how many are we talking about?
The documentary said something like an estimated 15,000 privately owned primates in the U.S.,
Whoa, seriously.
which is more than double the number in accredited zoos.
That's insane. I mean, no wonder there's so much potential for things to go wrong when you've got that many powerful animals, being kept so close to humans.
Exactly. And it's exactly why that documentary, Chimp Crazy, has really helped fuel this push for legislation like the Captive Primate Safety Act.
Oh, right. Now, what was I going to do again? I feel like I've heard about it, but
Basically, it would make it illegal to privately own primates as pets in the U.S., across the board.
yeah.
Similar to that Big Cat Public Safety Act that came about after Tiger King.
Right, right.
It seems like these documentaries, as crazy as they can be, are actually getting some stuff done.
It makes you wonder, though, is passing laws really enough? I mean, enforcing them is another thing entirely, and there are always going to be people who find ways around the rule.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to take a lot more than that. It's about changing attitudes, changing how people view these animals. And I think that's where Chimp Crazy has the potential to be really effective.
How so?
It kind of forces you to confront these, uncomfortable truths, makes you examine your own assumptions about animals, and hopefully encourages people to make more informed and, compassionate choices.
You keep saying uncomfortable truths, and it's true. Chimp Crazy really doesn't shy away from the hard parts of this, right? We see what happens, the scars from attacks and stuff. We hear from experts about how strong and unpredictable these chimps can be. It's not all fun and games.
Definitely not. And I think that's what makes it so powerful. It doesn't try to give you easy answers or sugarcoat anything. It just lays everything out there, all the messy realities, and makes you deal with these questions like, what is our relationship with the natural world, and is it what it should be?
Yeah. It all goes back to what you were saying earlier. Is this really about love? Or is it about something else? Do we just want these animals because they're exotic, because it's cool or whatever? It makes you think.
Right. And it also shows how blurry the lines can get between love and obsession. I mean, when you're talking about owning exotic animals, take Tonya Haddix. I mean, she clearly cared about Tonka, but was keeping him in her basement really in his best interest? These are the tough questions the documentary makes us ask.
It's interesting you bring her up because she's not the only one, right? There's also the story of Pam Roser and her chimp, Chance, and they seem to have a totally different experience. She actually lived with this chimp peacefully for years, taught him to watch 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Can you believe that? 2001. Wild.
So crazy, but it's like her experience is almost used as a counterpoint to Tonya's. Pam kind of beat the odds.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, was she just lucky? Or was there something different about their relationship, about Chance, that let them live like that?
It's a fascinating comparison. And it goes back to that unpredictability factor. Just because one chimp might be more, laid back, doesn't mean they all are. And even the calm ones, they can still do serious damage if they feel threatened or whatever.
Sure.
You can't forget what they are, wild animals. And no amount of love or training can totally change that. And I think that's a big takeaway from Chimp Crazy. We have to respect that wildness.
Okay, so where does that leave us? We've talked about the ethics, the dangers, all the complicated layers of this issue. Is there any hope? What can we even do? It feels like a bit of a downer, honestly. I mean, is there any light at the end of the tunnel here?
I think there's always hope. I mean, just the fact that these documentaries are being made, that people are actually talking about these issues, that's a huge step, right?
True, awareness is key. But what about real change? Like, on a practical level, what can people actually do to help?
Well, for one thing, supporting accredited sanctuaries like the one where Tonka ended up, that's huge. Those places rely on donations to keep running and giving those animals proper care.
Makes sense. And advocating for stronger laws, like that Captive Primate Safety Act we talked about.
Exactly. Contact your representatives, make some noise, that stuff really does make a difference.
It's interesting, though, because watching Chim Crazy, I couldn't help but think about the filmmakers themselves. They're in this weird position, right? Like, they obviously connect with Tonya while filming her, even though her choices are part of the problem they're exposing.
Oh, totally. It's something you see a lot with documentaries like this. It's messy. Real people, real emotions.
Hmm.
And the filmmakers, they're so embedded in that world, they can't help but form these bonds.
So what happens when the cameras stop rolling? Do they just, like, wash their hands of it, or...
Actually, you'll never guess this. They're still in touch with Tonya.
Get out. Are you serious? To this day.
Yep. They talked about it on Joe Rogan.
Wow. I'd love to know what their relationship is like now, especially after everything.
Right. But it seems like there's still some friendship there. But they've also used that to, encourage her to think about things differently.
That's pretty amazing, honestly, for both of them. It makes you wonder, though, if somewhere deep down Tony gets it, like the harm that was done to the chimps, even to herself, potentially.
That's the thing. You can never really know what's going on in someone else's head. But I do think Chimp Crazy does a good job of not making anyone look like the villain,
Yeah.
It's just showing us the gray areas, how complicated these relationships with animals can be.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just love, right? There's so much more to it than that.
Exactly. Chimp Crazy is kind of a cautionary tale when you think about it. It's about this human fascination with exotic animals and how the lines can get so blurred. We have to remember these animals have their own needs.
It's a lot to think about. So, as we wrap up here, what's like the one big takeaway you hope sticks with people?
I guess I'd say next time you see an animal on a screen, any animal, take a second to think about the bigger picture. What's the story there? Are they really where they belong?
It's about being a little more mindful, a little more aware.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, that about does it for this deep dive. Always a wild ride. Until next time, folks, stay curious out there.